Good evening and welcome to Eastern Nation, your trusted source for Ethiopia's latest updates in diplomacy, development, and regional affairs. In tonight's headlines, Ethiopia and Somaliland move to revive their long-dormant Memorandum of Understanding, as Somaliland's President Iro makes a landmark visit to Addis Ababa, signaling a potential reset in relations. Meanwhile, Ethiopia's external debt negotiations face new challenges, with reports suggesting bondholders are weighing legal options amid ongoing restructuring talks. On the diplomatic front, Ethiopia and Egypt reaffirmed their shared commitment to dialogue and mutual understanding, following the accreditation of Egypt's new ambassador in Addis Ababa. And in economic news, Ethiopia's export revenue surpassed $2.4 billion in the first quarter, propelled by growing AfCFTA integration and strengthened regional trade networks. Stay tuned for the full reports and expert insights, only here on Eastern Nation. Ethiopia and Somaliland seek to revive dormant Memorandum of Understanding as President Iro visits Addis Ababa. In a significant diplomatic development, Somaliland's President Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi Iro has arrived in Addis Ababa for his first official visit to Ethiopia since taking office in November 2024. According to Somaliland National Television, the visit follows an official invitation from the Ethiopian government and is expected to include high-level talks with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed focusing on bilateral relations, economic cooperation, and regional stability. The visit comes at a pivotal moment, as the much-discussed Memorandum of Understanding signed between Ethiopia and Somaliland in January 2024 appears to have stalled, producing little beyond the initial headlines that once promised to reshape the Horn of Africa's geopolitical landscape. The Memorandum of Understanding, hailed at the time as a groundbreaking agreement, proposed to grant Ethiopia access to Somaliland's Red Sea coast in exchange for potential recognition of Somaliland's self-declared independence. Yet, nearly a year later, the deal remains largely symbolic. No tangible progress has been made on port access, naval facilities, or legal ratification. Analysts describe the agreement as having faded into diplomatic limbo. Legal experts argue that the lack of transparency and legal clarity has hindered implementation. The MoU, never published in full, was signed as a memorandum rather than a treaty, meaning it carries no binding legal force. Political analysts note that its success has depended more on political will than on enforceable frameworks. The MoU also faced immediate regional opposition. Somalia denounced the agreement as a violation of its sovereignty, emphasizing that Somaliland remains part of its recognized territory. The Arab League and Egypt echoed similar concerns, warning that the pact risked heightening tensions in the already fragile Red Sea corridor. Within Somaliland itself, the deal sparked internal dissent, including the resignation of a defense minister who called the agreement a strategic misstep. In a December interview, former Somaliland President Musa Bihi Abdi revealed that growing international pressure, particularly from the African Union, Arab League, and Western partners, effectively halted progress on the MoU. There was even discussion of relocating the African Union headquarters if Addis Ababa did not reconsider, he said. In the months that followed, Ethiopia began recalibrating its foreign policy, restoring diplomatic engagement with Somalia through the Ankara Declaration and reaffirming commitments to regional cooperation. Security experts note that reconciliation efforts were crucial to maintaining collective action against regional threats such as Al-Shabaab. Now, as President Iro arrives in Addis Ababa, both sides appear poised to revisit the MoU's promises, cautiously, but with renewed intent. Many observers view this visit as a test of whether the symbolic agreement can evolve into a practical partnership. Addis Standard columnist Gulade Yusuf Aidan recently wrote that for Ethiopia and Somaliland to move forward, rhetoric must give way to legal instruments and actionable frameworks. Without these, he warned, the MoU risks being remembered only as a diplomatic relic. However, challenges remain formidable. Somalia's leadership continues to urge restraint and dialogue, emphasizing the need to uphold sovereignty and avoid escalations. President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, in a recent interview with Al Arabiya, called on Red Sea nations to pursue peaceful engagement and respect for territorial integrity. For Ethiopia, navigating this delicate diplomatic balance is critical. The country faces pressure from multiple directions, regional blocs, Arab League members, and internal political considerations. Meanwhile, Somaliland's domestic politics remain divided over how far to push the recognition issue without jeopardizing security or unity. Still, analysts say the moment holds potential. Horn of Africa expert Rashid Abdi, research director at Sahan Research, told Addis Standard that the visit marks a significant diplomatic moment and could help dispel speculation of strained relations. Both sides now have an opportunity to restore confidence, deepen dialogue, and explore mutual interests in a sincere and strategic manner, he said. Rashid added that a renewed partnership could center around security cooperation, trade facilitation, and the future of Berbera Port, a key economic lifeline for Somaliland and a potential strategic outlet for Ethiopia. As the two leaders meet in Addis Ababa, the stakes are high. The visit could either revive a stalled diplomatic vision or confirm that the Ethiopia-Somaliland MoU remains a missed opportunity. For both nations, the path forward will depend on whether political commitment can finally translate into concrete action, turning unfulfilled promises into pragmatic cooperation for the Horn of Africa's shared stability and growth. Ethiopia's debt talks stall as bondholders consider legal action, Reuters. Addis Ababa, debt restructuring negotiations between Ethiopia and its international bondholders have hit a standstill, leaving the country's financial recovery in uncertainty nearly 2 years after defaulting on its only Eurobond. According to Reuters, the breakdown marks a new challenge in Ethiopia's ongoing efforts to stabilize its economy under the G20's Common Framework for Debt Restructuring. Ethiopia's Ministry of Finance confirmed on Tuesday that the latest round of discussions with bondholders ended without agreement, citing major differences over key terms. The government acknowledged that, while substantial progress had been made, the parties were unable to reach a final deal. Officials said they hoped talks could resume in the foreseeable future. The East African nation entered default in late 2023 after requesting relief under the Common Framework, a mechanism designed by G20 nations to help debt-distressed countries restructure obligations involving both private and official creditors. According to Reuters, bondholders, including major global investors such as Morgan Stanley Investment Management, Franklin Templeton, VR Capital, and Farallon, expressed disappointment over the breakdown, describing the process as having reached an impasse. The committee representing these creditors said it remained open to further dialogue but would now consider all available options, including potential legal action. One sticking point has been the Common Framework's requirement of comparability of treatment, which ensures that all lenders, including official bilateral creditors such as China, receive similar terms. Bondholders said they were not given sufficient clarity on the terms extended to Ethiopia's largest official lenders, with China accounting for nearly 1/4 of the country's total $31 billion debt burden. The negotiations had included a proposed 15% haircut on the bond value and a value recovery instrument, allowing investors to regain part of their losses if Ethiopia's export earnings exceed expectations in coming years. The International Monetary Fund welcomed the progress made so far and urged both sides to continue dialogue, emphasizing that constructive engagement remains vital to Ethiopia's financial stability. Analysts say the stalemate highlights the broader difficulties within the Common Framework process itself, a system initially hailed as a breakthrough when launched in 2020, but now criticized for its slow pace and lack of enforcement power. Similar cases in Zambia and Ghana have faced lengthy delays, with both governments and creditors frustrated by procedural complexity and uncertain timelines. Economic experts also note growing tension over differing debt sustainability assessments. Bondholders argue that the IMF's projections underestimate Ethiopia's recent economic performance, including record export revenues of $8.3 billion in the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year, well above the fund's forecast of $6.37 billion. London-based analyst Abdulmanan Mohammed told Reuters that the process could be dragged out unless Addis Ababa adjusts its approach, suggesting Ethiopia might need to negotiate separate terms with private investors to move forward. For now, Ethiopia remains in financial limbo, its only international bond still in default, and talks with creditors paused. Observers say a swift resolution will depend on whether all sides can align economic data, political priorities, and mutual trust to restore the country's access to global capital markets. Ethiopia and Egypt reaffirm commitment to dialogue as new Egyptian ambassador presents credentials in Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa, in a gesture underscoring the enduring ties between two of Africa's most influential nations, Ethiopia's President Taye Atskisilassi yesterday received the credentials of Egypt's newly appointed ambassador, Dr. Obeda El Dandarouri. During the meeting at the National Palace, President Taye reaffirmed Ethiopia's commitment to deepening bilateral cooperation across various sectors, including agriculture, industry, and manufacturing. He described the relations between Addis Ababa and Cairo as historic and multifaceted, rooted in shared regional responsibilities and mutual interests. While acknowledging that certain technical matters remain unresolved, particularly in areas of strategic collaboration, the president emphasized confidence in both nations' ability to address them through dialogue and mutual understanding. Outstanding technical issues are always within reach of our collective wisdom, he said, signaling a tone of optimism and partnership. The arrival of Ambassador El Dandarouri comes at a time when Ethiopia and Egypt continue to navigate complex discussions over regional and development priorities. In recent months, both countries have expressed renewed willingness to approach outstanding matters through diplomacy and respect for shared interests. Observers view the ambassador's appointment as a potential opening for constructive engagement, helping steer relations toward stability and mutual benefit after years of differing perspectives on regional development and transboundary cooperation. As both Addis Ababa and Cairo face evolving regional challenges, today's diplomatic exchange reinforces the enduring message that collaboration, not confrontation, remains the cornerstone of their long-standing relationship. Ethiopia's export revenue surged past $2.4 billion in first quarter, driven by AfCFTA integration and regional trade growth. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's export sector is showing renewed momentum, with the country earning more than $2.48 billion in the first quarter of the current Ethiopian fiscal year, according to the Minister of Trade and Regional Integration, Kasahan Gof. Speaking at a performance review forum held in Addis Ababa, Minister Kasahan highlighted that the results represent a 65% increase compared to the same period last year, signaling one of the strongest quarterly performances in recent years. The minister noted that the first quarter achieved 117% of its projected performance, setting the country on track to meet its $9.4 billion annual export target. The gains, he explained, reflect growing diversification across key sectors including agriculture, manufacturing, and mining, as well as improved logistics and market access initiatives. Ethiopia's export momentum also comes on the heels of its historic participation in the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, under which the nation recently launched its first official exports to fellow African markets. The government described the milestone as a turning point in regional integration, linking Ethiopia's economy more closely with neighboring states through both air and land trade corridors. Minister Kasahan emphasized that Ethiopia's continued progress under the AfCFTA framework demonstrates the country's readiness to expand intra-African trade while edging closer to full World Trade Organization, WTO, membership, both critical components of the nation's long-term economic reform agenda. In the previous fiscal year, Ethiopia recorded record-breaking export earnings of $8.3 billion, marking a 116% surge from the year before. Analysts say the new figures confirm that Ethiopia's strategic trade reforms and renewed engagement with regional partners are beginning to yield tangible results. As the Horn of Africa's second most populous nation continues to modernize its trade and transport systems, officials remain confident that Ethiopia is positioning itself as a leading export hub in East Africa, anchored in resilience, integration, and sustainable economic growth. Thank you for watching The Eastern Nation, Ethiopia's voice for truth, progress, and unity. Our mission is to deliver facts with clarity, connecting Ethiopia's stories to Africa's rise. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for your next update on Ethiopia's news, economy, and geopolitics. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired.